Well, welcome back to Open to Truth, a podcast all about exploring big ideas and discovering truth together. My name is Clint.
Hey, I'm Tony. Welcome back.
A little bit of housekeeping up front. We have a couple new microphones.
We got new mics. I'm pretty jazzed about it.
Pretty
I've been
happy.
wanting these for a while.
I think you'll notice I think it will sound better.
I hope so.
Yep.
Yeah. Silky smooth.
Two things. If you are an audio-only listener, just wanted to make you aware that we do have a YouTube channel, so you could see us.
If you want that.
Gesticulating here with our hands and weird faces.
You know, they
that
might
we're pulling.
not. Have you ever listened only to like audio for a while and then you go to see what this person looks like and you're sort of disappointed? Yeah. I've had that happen. Okay. So if you want us to remain
Brace
a mystery,
yourselves.
maybe don't.
Yeah. And likewise, if you are seeing this on YouTube, then we are on all of the platforms that you can get a podcast.
If you'd prefer to do it like while you're driving or something.
Or working out.
And you shouldn't really be looking at a YouTube video while you're driving.
Right.
Listen to the audio podcast.
Sure. Just wanted to make that little note.
No, that's good.
We are going to do a mailbag episode today.
I love these ones. I'm glad we're doing this.
It's our third one.
And this is your questions that you've submitted to us, listener questions that we're going to do our best to interact with. And disclaimer, we say this all the time, but like this isn't a teaching podcast. We're not experts. We don't claim to have the final word on this stuff, but it's a conversation that we invite you to join every week. And some of you have. So we're going to interact with your questions and comments.
Yeah. Now, typically, I have already replied to these through the inbox.
Right, they're not just waiting, like, when are they going to do another mailbag?
Yeah. Like, I'll get back to you, like, pretty quickly, you know, but just for the public audience here to also enjoy some of the, I just curated some of these questions, so.
Awesome.
Some of the really good ones. All right, this is from Corbin, and he said this, it was kind of a long email, but I'll just take a couple sentences here. So he's referring to the Sharing Your Faith episode, where I kind of gave my preferred way of sharing my faith, and we looked at like the human predicament of death, moral failure, and suffering, using that as a starting place to kind of get people on the same page. Like, these are problems you should care about.
If you're a religious inquirer,
yeah,
what problem are you trying to solve by looking to religion?
Let's think of God. Instead of all the notions you've heard growing up, let's just think of God as the being that is willing and able to rescue you from that predicament. Okay, so Corbin wants to focus on the first predicament of death, namely the possibility that my person, me, will come to an end. The finality of that, right? Not just physical death.
Not just your body, but like
personal death.
your
like
consciousness.
whatever it is that I am,
which
ceases to be.
We could discuss. That's probably an episode on itself.
Sure. Yeah. What
are you?
Right.
But yeah.
And so I suggested that it's in that episode that it is bad. It's a bad thing to cease to be.
Like yeah. Okay.
That persistence, continuing to exist, is good.
All things being equal, right? Like I can imagine some existences. I have pleaded actually for death myself. You know,
right.
Like
for
when I'm
relatively minor.
When I'm in so much pain or something, it's like I just want the lights to go out.
Was it last year that you evulsed your finger?
That was I did. Last year I did a few things last year. Chopped the
meaty pulp of the finger.
Yeah, really took a chunk out of that.
You were doing the lighting over.
Split my head open. Yeah, cut it on aluminium. Split my head open. Actually, it was a really bad bout of constipation that caused me to plead for my death, if you can believe that.
Oh.
It's so bad. I don't know if you've ever felt it.
I haven't, no.
It's like Satan reaching up and just squeezing all your internal organs.
Okay.
Brutal.
So you've wanted to...
So anyway, I'm just saying, all of that to say...
But maybe you wanted just your physical death, not your...
That's true.
You wanted whatever soul
I actually wanted to
live
continue exist, but without the pain.
Right.
Yeah.
I get you.
Okay, so back to Corbin's email, though.
Yeah, so I was suggesting that it's a genuinely bad thing to cease to be, again, all things being equal, and we can explore that a bit more. So here's what he says. Other than appealing to intuition, can you say more about the justification for valuing this as genuinely bad, that is the cessation, and persistence as good? In the podcast, Clint appealed to intuition, but I most definitely do not share that intuition as I daily yearn for my cessation. He goes on to say, if I can just find it, where I'd want to take the conversation is what criteria could we use to determine whether persistence is a good or not, as well as what else is or ought to be among the goods to be pursued.
What a well-written question.
Yeah, thank you, Corbin.
Well done.
And just a heartfelt, gratitude for you engaging with this content. I hope you find it helpful. That is quite a thing to say.
That you yearn daily for your cessation.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't yearn daily for mine. I'd be curious. I mean, I'd want to grab lunch with you, Corbin, and chat. Is that something that you want every moment of every day? Or is it like there's times during the day where you're like, I just wish it would end? Or a season of life. But to wake up every day and go, this again? That's a tough way to continue if that's,
right.
What's rattling around in your mind.
So, and I don't want to suppose that there's some really easy answer to this. And for those folks that don't want to cease to be, then I don't know if this is really like the problem of how to value persistence isn't at the fore for them, right?
For those people.
Does that make sense?
It's sort of a given.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. But even for those people, we might just want to reflect more on what is persistence itself inherently or intrinsically good?
Right.
Or does the quality of the experience of that existence
whether it's good or not?
Yeah.
That's a valid question to wonder.
And I think it's the latter.
The quality is what determines whether or not it's good to persist. Yeah, going back to the constipation thing.
Particularly what immediately came to mind was I had just listened to a conversation with, I don't know the name of the guest, but it was on Jordan Peterson's podcast. It's the director of Braveheart.
Oh.
Now, have you seen Braveheart, Mel Gibson? No, kidding.
Bits and pieces.
Okay.
I mean, I know about it.
Well, I know what we're doing a couple weekends from now.
All right.
But in any case, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie, it's based loosely on the life of William Wallace. And I don't know for sure if this is how he died in history, but at the end of the movie, he is like disemboweled and then finally beheaded, I think, in the movie.
What a savage way to go.
And so the director was talking about how he was getting pressure from the studio to like make it a happy ending. Like the gang would rush in at the end and save him before this would happen. And he's like, no, like he has to go out this way,
needs to be tragic,
standing for what he believes in and yelling out that freedom as he's on the table getting eviscerated.
Jeez.
But I'm thinking of in that movie, the reason this happens is he's betrayed by one of his kinsmen. The kinsman would have likely been slain in a battle or something. So his life would have been shortened had he stayed loyal to William's just cause of freeing the Scots. But is his longer life, now that he's betrayed his friends, inherently valuable just because it's longer? I suggest that your moral failing and the life you now have to live as a betrayer is worse.
Yeah.
This is a worse life now that
that's the kind of hell you're now inhabiting.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
As a way of pushing on the notion that just continuing to exist is obviously better.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Because you could opt in by your free choices a worse life.
Yeah.
Now there's ways that life can be bad outside of your arena of choice.
You mean like health issues and whatever else?
Disease and
Well, help me with this. I think my thinking on this has changed over time. I used to think for a long time that in order for like my life to be meaningful in a true sense, that my existence had to continue eternally somehow, but that a finite existence, like if I really did meet personal death at some point, that would somehow strip my life of its meaning, the finitude of it. I'm less committed to that now, that just because something comes to an end, that it wasn't valuable while it was happening. Like an analogy I've heard, actually I think Peterson probably uses it, is like music. The best symphonies aren't the ones that finish very quickly or whatever. It's like the length of the symphony actually doesn't matter so much. It's the movement within the symphony as it's happening. That's where the meaning is found. And I think there's something to that to the degree that I am awake and engaged with my life while I'm alive, it's meaningful. And if that was all to stop one day, it's just less clear to me that would be, I used to think that would be the worst horror imaginable, and now I'm less convinced.
Well, those are different, I think, when you describe it as a horror.
That's true.
Versus meaning.
Yeah.
I think you're right that meaning isn't tied to infinitude. Significance doesn't require everlastingness.
Yeah.
But the mere claim I think I'm trying to give is that the even better if, EBI, it would be better if it were to continue.
Yeah. Well, even when we were talking about heaven and
again,
afterlife,
all things being equal, we're not talking about the betrayer. You know, don't do that. So this is in the context of a blissful type afterlife. And again, that we can go into the weeds on what that would even be like
or
and
what it
feel
could
like.
be like. Yeah, who knows? I think when we were talking about, you know, the good place and the afterlife and whatnot, and been speculating about that, I don't think we're committed to it being a state of permanent satisfaction either. There was another portion in his email where he sort of talks about that. I don't know if you want to dig that up, but the idea that I don't know, maybe there's many people who think this, maybe I did for a long time, that sort of once you die and you're ushered into the heavenly state, whatever that is, that you're sort of permanently satisfied in some way, lastingly satisfied. You don't experience desire, craving, suffering of any kind. It's sort of I guess in some sense, a static arrival point or something. But nowadays, I am more open to an afterlife that would include goals and progress and movement and frustration at
and
times.
maybe shortcoming. Maybe you don't reach that goal.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if that's heretical to say, but yeah. I don't know. Did you find what he's talking about?
I mean, man, if heaven is at all like this life, even something mundane like playing a game of basketball, I mean, that there are winners and losers. And so like,
yeah. Not
everyone can win the game.
Not
of
everybody's
basketball.
dunking all the time.
Yeah. And so shoot, I didn't win that game.
Yeah.
But in any case, I don't think, there is a little line in here wondering about the absence of the possibility of dissatisfaction.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that, like you were just mentioning, let's leave open the possibility that dissatisfaction could at times creep in. What I'm rejecting is that eventually your existence in the afterlife would become intolerably tedious or boring due only to its infinitude.
Yes.
That there's something about the everlastingness of it, that property alone, that would make it insufferable. And
that's what you want to reject.
That's what I want to reject. That you should, ahead of performing the religious inquiry of whether God exists, don't even look into it at all, man. Because if these things are tied together, God and afterlife, you don't want a part of that.
Right.
Because afterlife is bad. If you get locked into this thing forever,
you'll eventually yearn daily for your cessation.
Yes. Yeah. You would eventually reach that point given infinitude.
Yes. And you're rejecting that.
I think
there might be such a thing as renewable pleasures.
I think it's really reasonable to think that those might be such things. Now, again, I have only but my limited experience here. I guess I could be wrong, but...
Oh, yeah, he asked you to point to something outside your intuition.
And I am pointing to things in my life. Yeah. So spending time with my children, or even last night we got together with some close couple friends. Times spent with God, and not every time I spend with God in prayer, but some of those times are in worship, like in music, food, even something as banal as that. Yeah. The taste of Diet Mountain Dew that I will get on the way home. I yearn for it now.
You're already planning it.
And I will yearn for it next Friday,
Yeah.
So
yes,
I think those things are renewable. No, I know those things are renewable. I can return to them as a source of pleasure in the future. I have a really good confidence in that. The big question is whether it's inexhaustible. Will there come a time when those won't be well springs of pleasure, that I couldn't stand it because I've just dipped in too many times?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I've experienced seasons of my life where I get burned out on something that I was really enjoying, and it no longer brings me, I have no desire to do it. It doesn't bring me pleasure, happiness,
even the
whatever.
simple pleasures of keeping this mortal coil going, food, drink, sleep.
You're asking me, have I? No, not those. Not,
Okay.
I'm thinking binging video games or
Okay.
overdoing it on a food, and it's like, I don't want that for like a month or something. But a month later, I will want Chipotle
Right.
again.
And in this afterlife,
Yeah.
purportedly, there's plenty of time for it to kind of refresh again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't see a reason. Yeah. So just to contextualize this, I'm totally open to having the conversation. We can wonder about the inexhaustible pleasures, but to suggest to someone that they should not engage in religious inquiry because it's going to be intolerably tedious. It will lead to that. Like, how do you know that? I just, at the very least, remain agnostic about it.
Yeah.
But like for the paper I published and what's coming up in my dissertation, like plenty of people have written, like professional philosophers saying like, oh yeah, it's going to be intolerably tedious. Oh my gosh, dude. Okay.
Yeah.
I felt the need to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Does that cover enough?
I think
of
so.
that, or?
I don't know if we've given him a silver bullet there,
Right.
but
I would suggest too. So if you're finding yourself in a position where like you kind of just agree that you would like to continue existing, then I would think that the morally perfect rescuer would be interested in providing that if that's for your good, which it seems like it would be. Now, if you're someone that is not like captured by that idea, you don't think persistence would be valuable, I would wonder why that is. Just doing some self-reflection, and I don't mean to give like some trite answer, but do a deep inventory of what is it that would make me want to cease to be, and whatever you come up with there that's causing that. I have confidence that if a morally perfect being does exist and wants what's best for you, whatever that collection is, that being could solve that problem.
solve whatever it's causing you to
Yeah.
want to stop being.
Who knows what it is, you know, emotional deprivation, you know, or a lack of tenderness with a loved one, or who knows what, I don't know what it could be for someone, but my imagination is not being stretched thin at all, imagining that a being could design a
place you'd want to stay.
yeah.
Yeah. That you'd want to stick around for.
Again, none of this is proof that God exists or there is a heaven.
No.
This is
It's just speculative.
speculative.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Well, thanks, Corbin. Thanks for writing in. Yep. Yeah, again, well-formed questions. Good thoughts there.
Question number 2. Justin asked, can natural theology still be valuable as a stepping stone toward Christianity? Okay, so a couple key terms for those who may just be tuning into this for the first time.
Yeah, let's define some terms.
Natural theology, the attempt to know whether God exists and the nature of God, purely from, I don't know, I guess, non-special or divine revelation.
Yeah.
Like God showcasing himself or speaking to you or through a religious text, but rather just from your own reason or observing the world around you.
Like anybody could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's public evidence, publicly available evidence.
Yeah.
So the project of natural theology is to track down that evidence and see if it leads you to the conclusion that God exists or God has some property.
Yeah, and so we did an episode on natural theology earlier on in this season, and you laid out some of your concerns with natural theology. You think that it fails to do what it sets out to do, which is introduce you to a God that is personal and is able to rescue you in some way. You think natural theology doesn't quite get you there. And Justin's question is, but isn't it better than nothing? Does it get you closer than nothing?
Yeah, so my position, you're right, is twofold. Not only do I think the natural theology arguments don't work, like they're not successful in generating the truth of the conclusion based on the truth of the premises, but I also don't think we should expect them to work, given this way of conceiving of God as the rescuer. I'm not sure that God would really be interested in revealing God's self in that manner.
Yeah.
Would want, because again, not to repeat too much of that episode, but that there's something about the public nature of that kind of evidence that I can remain a bit distant volitionally or morally. I can treat it as a spectator. The evidence itself isn't morally transformative. We've used this line a bunch of times. I think you corrected me that it's in James, but like even the demons believe and shudder.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
So like there's this little line in scripture that kind of insinuates, like even this will that's totally bent on malevolence has belief that God exists. Like that didn't really help at all.
Yeah.
For them to know that God existed.
There's something more important
right
at stake. So I'm sympathetic to Justin's question. I think it's one that I've asked a while when you were first trotting out all of your radical dissertation ideas to me. But so for somebody who, let's say the atheist, or even, let's say the agnostic, somebody who's like searching for the religious inquirer, somebody who's searching for God, to lay out an argument like let's say the Kalam cosmological argument, classic natural theology argument, whatever begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Okay, that's a natural theology argument where the conclusion is the universe has a cause. That's the conclusion of the argument. Then you're left to so even if that argument goes through, you're left to sort of speculate about, well, what kind of cause could this be? It would have to be outside space. It would have to be outside time because those came into being at the Big Bang. And so you start to sort of build these little qualities that you think could fit, and we're trying to...
temporal, really powerful agent.
An unembodied mind. It's like, it's starting to sound a lot like God, you know? And Justin's... You're saying, even with all those little other qualities that you maybe can speculate about, it never quite gets you across the line to relational God who wants to transform you.
That is what I'm saying.
At most you get strange, powerful, unembodied
maybe you get
figure.
theism of theism of a certain variety.
Okay.
Maybe that's the case. But I guess, so what is this question asking? Is it still valuable as a stepping stone toward Christianity? Well, again, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what he's saying there is, wouldn't it be helpful in a conversation with an atheist or an agnostic, maybe more an atheist, somebody who's just like, nope, don't do spirituality, to lay out a natural theology argument and open them up to the universe having a cause outside of itself? Isn't that doesn't that get them closer to relationship with God than I guess not using those arguments at all? Isn't an atheist who is open to the idea of a non-material cause is slightly closer to being a Christian than the atheist who is not open to a non-material cause?
Dude, maybe I'm so wrong about this, but
oh wow,
I just kind of reject that whole rubric. I think everything about almost what you just said misses the point.
Great.
I mean, like,
great.
I guess I'm past the point where God's really cares about the believies.
Yeah.
And that, like, everything what you just said was about
changing
like agnosticism and theism and Christianity. How we've been talking about so far is adopting a certain proposition.
Yes.
Accepting it.
Right.
And so valuable if we mean Christianity just as endorsing an idea that Jesus is God or something like that, and a few other ones, let's say.
Yeah.
Then I guess so, yeah. Like being a theist as a result of accepting the conclusion of a natural theology argument like the Kalam is closer on that little line. Oops, I hit the mic.
It's okay. These mics can handle anything, man.
Okay. Not used to it. It seems closer than agnosticism or atheism, right? In the collection of beliefs.
Yes, it does.
You're closer to Christianity if you're a theist than if you're an agnostic.
We can agree on that.
Like,
yes.
So in one way, yes, to answer your question. But in another way, not at all.
Oh my gosh, Justin, he's being annoying.
Because I don't know if Christianity is about or what God ultimately cares about is you changing those beliefs,
mental states.
That's
he wants
right.
to transform your heart, or wants to actually interact with you, cooperate, co-create with you on a day-to-day basis. And that's more important than do you believe the right things about the way the world is.
And I would even go, I want to go a little bit further and say, well, I have a published paper called Is Natural Theology Cognitively Presumptuous?
Do you?
Yeah. But
Great.
And I almost want to go further than that paper and say there's something that can be morally presumptuous or damaging about this project.
The Natural Theology Project.
A little bit, yeah. Because it's saying...
Well, it emphasizes the wrong thing, you mean?
Well, just the posture of it is, I'm going to find out about ultimate reality and the nature of God apart from whatever God's up to. I can just kind of wrangle the world by my own intellectual prowess, and I will find out whether God exists or not.
Right.
Now, I get it, in that there is a whole like systematic theology behind it where you might say, oh, this is how God wants to reveal, and he's left clues for us in nature or given us the powers of the mind through the ontological argument to discern that God exists just from sitting in an armchair and thinking about it.
Reasoning, yeah.
I kind of reject that theology from kind of what we've been saying throughout other podcasts.
Sure.
Is that making sense?
No, it makes sense.
So if we're only talking about the belief structure for a person, then yeah, theism is closer to Christianity than who would deny that? I don't know if it gets you anywhere closer in the currency that God cares about, and that's your moral transformation. There will be another way of saying it. There will be plenty of people that profess to be Christians that when, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but when they encounter the real living God in this blissful type afterlife, perhaps would be a little bit shocked to what true love is really like, and maybe an atheist or agnostic is more acquainted.
Yeah.
On that last day.
Now, I can imagine, I'm with you, I can imagine that having a conversation with somebody like this about natural theology maybe moves them along the path to, well, maybe as you get to resurrection and stuff, arguments for that, maybe I will investigate this Jesus fellow. And as you investigate the Jesus fellow, you discover something very compelling. Like we talked about in the previous episode, that when you see the cross and the love displayed there, that transforms you in some way. So even my own life, I can see how natural theology was a helpful stepping stone for me to be where I am today, like in terms of how I approach God and think about it. My understanding of what those arguments are accomplishing is different than it used to be. But it wasn't unhelpful for me to spend time with them. Yeah,
well, we were talking to your brother Brad the other day, and I posed this question to him, and like he pointed out, I think kind of what you're saying about, like, I loved studying natural theology. It brought up a lot of helpful ideas and brought together different aspects of my worldview that I hadn't made connections to, and had me thinking more about like the resurrection of Jesus, and just got me really interested into the
philosophy,
into spiritual
theology,
things.
Yep, and you're closely examining things. Yeah.
But then that's not unique to natural theology.
There's plenty of things that form your mind.
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, man.
I had lunch with Justin. He lives locally. So,
does he?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And we talked about this a bunch.
Okay.
Okay. Lastly, Dennis. How do I want to approach the Dennis question? So, pretty interesting. He sent me a list of items from the scripture, and he wanted to know whether I thought they happened. Here are some of them.
Did they happen historically, he means?
I think so. Adam and Eve, Noah and the flood, Moses and the 10 plagues, parting of the Red Sea, Sodom and Gomorrah, Daniel in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
Jesus feeding the 5,000, Jesus and Peter walking on the water, Jesus turning water into wine, and the raising of Lazarus.
So you just want to go through the list and like, yes,
no,
yes,
no,
no,
want to
yes,
go through
no,
that
no,
whole
yes.
list. The listeners have already forgotten the beginning of the list. I want to.
I'm curious what motivates this question.
I know that's what I want to get to. Yeah, it would take us too far afield, I think, to go through
to actually dive into each one. Yeah. In what sense does it? So he wants to know if these things happened historically as they are described in the biblical text.
That's right.
And presumably, I don't want to put words in Dennis's mouth, but I imagine sort of part of the motivation for that is wanting to know, can I trust what I'm reading here? Or like, broadly speaking, is it true? Is the Bible true? Are all parts of it true? Are only some parts of it true? And we've maybe mentioned this in previous episodes, but I think one thing that's maybe helpful is for at least some of these stories, the historicity of them is sort of besides the point of the story. Whether or not it like actually happened physically as described is sort of to miss the point of some of these stories anyway. In the same way that to worry about whether the tortoise and the hare actually raced would be sort of to miss the point of that whole fable. It's to teach you a principle. It's to teach you a lesson. And not to say that the entire Bible is like an Aesop's fable. There is historical narrative in there where they are trying to describe the history of a nation and that sort of thing. But figuring out which genre your particular story belongs to there is really going to influence how much you need that thing to have happened historically to have confidence in drawing a spiritual truth from it.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So when I think this comes up with the topic of biblical inerrancy, the absence of error.
Yeah.
Right. And so typically that, I mean, there's a number of ways that inerrancy could be described. One is it is true in all that it affirms and teaches. So, but now we have to be careful about what we're building into what it affirms and teaches.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole game.
That's the challenge. So, what is this thing teaching?
Yeah. Is this purporting to tell you that Daniel was in a lion's den? I don't know. Like each of these needs to be investigated on their own. And I'm not a biblical scholar. You know, I keep saying this in each episode, caveats or whatever, but yeah, I'm not trained expert on the book of Daniel. Like there are people out there that have translated it from the original Hebrew and know so much more about this.
Years and years of their life, just Daniel. Yeah.
But I just want to, more at the 30,000 foot view, make the comment that the genre would matter. So just because I read a sentence, Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, or Daniel's in the lion's den, I should not just bring my like rationalist baggage to modernistic view to the table like I'm reading a newspaper article that's telling me about current events, and so I bring all these assumptions about that genre to it, like here's a play-by-play of what really happened, because now I'm building into my doctrine of inerrancy, it's making claims about how history unfolded, and so to deny that Daniel wasn't even a guy or was in the lion's den or thrown into a furnace,
it would be to say it's in error.
Yeah, and so you've denied inerrancy. Well, I don't know if that's what it's purporting to teach.
Right.
You know, we'd have to go case by case through all of these.
Yeah.
And even then, or you might say that's just trying to teach a theological or moral lesson. Okay. And so inerrancy would say, well, it's true in all that it affirms and teaches for that theology or morality. But even then, we might quibble with, do we have to subscribe to that?
Even the historical stories that are included, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, just about any story that's in the Bible is there to teach you something about man and God and that dynamic and relationship, right? Isn't that why it was recorded? Or is the motivation, I mean, maybe for Kings and Chronicles, the motivation is just keep a record of our nation's history. But I'm thinking, why was this stuff written down at all? Why communicate any of this? And is the important thing that was trying to be communicated, hey, these events took place here? Or is it like, hey, we learned something about our nature and God's nature back here, and it's valuable for you to learn that too? Like, why was this stuff written down and communicated at all?
That's a great question, man.
I don't know.
I mean, just, even with our modern genre of history writing, I love contrasting it with like a newspaper. So if you were to read the sports section of a newspaper, like the Akron Beacon Journal, now some are more editorial and might describe in more colorful language, like what some of the players were doing on the field. But usually there's like, they'll end up being a section, the Bobcats were defeated 77-70. They're giving you a list of facts.
Yep.
You know, they used this timeout at this time. And whereas, so that's a version of it. It's kind of a history genre, the sports genre.
This is what happened. Here's how the game went.
Now, place that alongside a textbook about American history. Now, they're going to be a little bit different because the point I'm getting to is there is a curative or agenda-driven aspect to any history writing, in a way.
When you say curative, you don't mean something that heals. You mean like curating.
Curating. I have to make some decisions about what to include and what to leave on the cutting room floor.
Of course.
And so there are hundreds and thousands of lives that were lived out in American history that you're not giving all the details of. All these different families that lived and died and all of the soldiers.
Right.
And you just can't.
No, you're picking and choosing the salient.
So you're trying to tell a story. So that's what's happening in Scripture as well, through these you brought up Kings and Chronicles, of like a mythicized history. And trying to tell a story about God and man.
Where'd we come from?
Yeah, man.
What's our relationship with God? Yeah.
And so if that's what's trying to be communicated, let's say, then maybe that's another way we can tweak what we're saying about inerrancy. Like, is it even right for us to be asking or holding up the standard of it's true and all that it affirms and teaches? Well, some of this stuff isn't trying to affirm or teach.
Yeah.
It's a collection, maybe just a single author or a group of editors that are like, okay, we have this agenda, and that we don't need to, that's not pejorative.
Right.
It's a goal,
we're aiming at something. Yeah.
To pass on to our future generations the story of our people who have been betrothed to Yahweh in some way, the deliverer of our people from bondage. And here's how we ended up in our promised land, let's say. You know, whatever the agenda might be, and we're telling you that story. So, I mean, maybe you can get some kind of like really general principle that's being affirmed or taught, and I don't know. More careful work has to be done than, okay, what's the truth claim in this little sentence here? And that all of those together all need to be 100% factual or historically map onto things.
Well, especially given that there's, what would you say? There's lots of different ways to think about what Scripture is trying to teach and affirm, like different interpretations.
Oh, sure.
That you're subject to. So even if that's your bar, that's inerrant in all that it teaches and affirms, depending on who you talk to, that passage is teaching or affirming something different than what this guy thinks, and you're left with that challenge to sort out as well.
Right. So yeah, just back to Dennis's question, could you please say if you believe these events happened? I don't automatically think that a thing happened because it's in the Bible. So I'd have to take it on case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
As you get toward, I find myself, just to throw Dennis a bone, I'll answer a little bit of this. The Jesus stories, I find
more confident.
I'm more confident in those.
Yeah.
Rather than Adam and Eve, man. That is reaching back to
so far.
Eons in the past.
Thousands and thousands of years.
I have really good reason to think that genre of literature is not trying to tell you a historical account of human origins, but is rather like a poem about a temple inauguration, where the temple, instead of the surrounding culture, is like, here, God lived in this little temple and you go here to sacrifice to him. Oh, wait, the cosmos are God's temple.
The whole thing is the temple. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I feel the same way. Maybe part of that is that we have, like, in the Gospels, we have sort of multiple independent attestation to the life of Jesus, the things he did and said. So, but for Adam and Eve, I mean, we've got other creation myths that we can sort of compare it to. But yeah, I'm with you. We'd have to take it case by case.
Yeah.
Good question, though, Dennis.
Right.
Yeah.
Happy to dialogue in person somehow about those.
Yeah. Good on you, Reverend.
Yeah, I think that's good for now for this mailbag. If these brought up other questions that you're having, or in other episodes that you've enjoyed, if you're having questions, please write them into the show at mailbag@opentotruth.com, and I'll respond to you, and we'll get you in one of the future mailbags.
Yeah, we love to interact with what you've got to say. We know that these sorts of questions and the deconstruction, reconstruction journey can be an uncomfortable one, can be a lonely one, but we're having a conversation that we're inviting you to join. So yeah, write in, leave a comment on the YouTube video if you want. We'll interact with that as well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Stay curious.
See ya.